Okay, we're live. It's for the 11th edition. I'm going to make sure I'm counting still now. It's the 11th edition of the Data Value Show. And today it's about the value of data governance. And who better to talk about that is Nicola Askham. Welcome, Nicola.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Always love the opportunity to talk about data governance.
And yeah, if you watch it, we like talking about data here as well. So we're in the best place for that. So so we caught up at Big Data London for the first time, I think, even though collaborated digitally up until then. So you came to the meetup. It was great to meet you in person, and it was great to meet you at Big Data London as well. So maybe for the audience, do you want to quick introduction about yourself and what do you do in the data world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So, my name is Nicola Askham. I'm actually known as the data governance coach, and so kind of follows that I help people understand and manage their data better. I've been doing that for 20 years now, which is quite scary. I'm really lucky these days. I get to work with large organizations that normally the data's a mess and they realize that they need some help resolving it, or quite often it's organizations are starting exciting new initiatives, which I'm sure some people will have questions about, and they realize they're not going quite to plan because they forgot about the data and the data governance side of things. So I as well as doing coaching and consulting for my clients, I actually love doing training courses and sessions like this, because I think it's really important to give people the skills to make sure that data is used to solve problems and make better informed decisions. So having opportunities to come on things like this is just perfect.
Yeah, and I suppose I should say that anyone can ask any questions, but it looks like Ian wasn't even waiting for that. He's already in there straight away with the first one. And we've got a few bullet points that went out as part of this that we'll have as discussion points. But I think it's not a bad one to start with. Ian's one is, there you go. Let's put it up for the viewers can see. Okay, what is data governance in layman terms, and why do you need it, and what's the fastest way to get it up and running? A good question, but a big question as well.
It is quite a big question, actually. So, what is data governance in layman's terms? So, I actually said this when we were at Big Data London last week. I think I said it probably in every presentation and panel I was involved in. I don't think we should talk about what data governance is an awful lot. I think people are much more interested in why they want it. The what is quite boring, but I do understand, Ian, if you don't know what it is, me saying, well, you should know why rather than what. That's the second part of your question anyway. So it's a framework of roles and responsibilities and processes to help us understand and manage our data better. So data governance itself, you don't tend to do just for the sake of doing data governance, for the fun of it. Often the primary reason is to understand and improve the quality of your data, but it actually supports every other data management discipline that there is. I've worked with all sorts of companies that have invested a lot in perhaps, say, data science and analytics, and then realized that they're not getting the results they want because nobody can find the data, or when they find it, it's rubbish, or it wasn't what they thought it was. So data governance is one of those, I would say, is very much a foundation. We do the kind of the boring bit of the building. We're underground so that everybody else can build these amazing structures on top of us, and that they will succeed. So why do you need it? Oh, well, I think this is a really good question, because it's one that I actually teach on my training course, and then immediately afterwards go, well, now just ignore everything I've said and go and work out what it means for you. But there are some generic kind of benefits, but I always tell people don't go and spout these. So you're talking about things like efficiencies. I mean, how many times is your organization wasting time because work has to be redone, or you're duplicating effort, or things are going wrong because the data's not there, or it's in the wrong format, or it was poor quality? So inefficiencies, really good at that, and therefore the costs associating with that. One of the big ones I think of is making the right decisions. I've worked with some organizations where some senior people have genuinely made what they felt were tough but the right decisions for their organizations, only to find out that the data they made that decision on was wrong. And I think perhaps we're coming to a time when perhaps execs don't automatically assume that if it's on a report you've given me, it must be right. It's kind of thing. But, getting the right decisions for a whole host of sectors, it's a regulatory requirement. I don't actually like doing that as the primary reason, because I think the benefits are so much wider than regulatory compliance.
I think everyone normally has that default position. It's all about the regulatory. It's all about the no police. You can't do that. You can't do this, and that's and that is. I think it's right. It's not the main thing that data governance is there for.
No, absolutely. So and I think generally, I'd always encourage you, if you listen to this wondering why your organization needs it, I'd go back to your corporate strategy, look at what your key objectives are, and then ask yourself really seriously, is our data good enough to meet that? Because if it's not, that's why you need data governance. And then you can talk to senior stakeholders about the thing they're interested in, because they're not really interested in data. They're interested in the outcome of what data governance will give them, not data governance itself.
That's a really good point, and I'm the methodologies I promote when trying to do a large transformation project is you need to do it in bite-sized chunks, and each of those bite-sized chunks should have an element of the data governance capability or a maturity. If you treat it like that, it becomes hidden. It's not a big data governance project. It is data governance as a way of working as part of your strategy. And the linking everything to your business strategy is what we should all do in that data world, and that's just exactly the same thing for governance as well. It should be packaged up that you're doing a slice of that governance at the same time as maybe a new dashboard or new insight capability. You add some maturity to it, show a better way of working, get other people working in that way.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a good one. I suppose it's a long question, but the fastest way to get it up and running, I think I might say I might help you on this one, Nicola. I think the method I was just saying there is probably the best way to get it up and running. If you go and try and plan to do a 3-month, 4-month initiative, calling it a data governance project, you're probably not going to get sign off from your board for it, because we won't evidence what value it can provide. You may say, oh, it could do this, but you can't provide a tangible business value association to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of iterative data governance. Find a big need, a pilot to start with, and then do it in chunks. I like you're doing things in bite-sized chunks. That reminds me of one of my favorite jokes from when I was a child of how do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
In bite-sized chunks. Well, data governance is your elephant, and we've got to do it in small chunks. And I think, and I don't say I think this from like reading things or anything. I know from my early days of doing data governance, which was a long time ago now, but I made every mistake in the book, including trying to do everything at once and bouncing into senior stakeholders' offices full of naivety and enthusiasm, saying we're going to do all of this much and all our data is going to be perfect and we'll all live happily ever after, at which point they laughed and threw me out their offices. So we've got to do it in something that's not too big to be, nobody wants to do extra work. Everybody is really busy. Everybody else's programs, they think they're more important. So we need to tie ours to everybody else's and make them successful and do it in these achievable amounts. But fast, I'm sorry, Ian, is not a word that usually gets associated with data governance.
Exactly. In fact, we've got another one from Ian as well, but we won't only take Ian's questions, but they're not bad ones. What happens if you don't pay to have it in my organization? So is that the do nothing problem?
Yeah, now this is really real as well. I'm sure loads of people listen to this have had this, the one that always comes to mind is a couple of years ago, I did some work with an investment bank to help them make the case for data governance in the first place. And I was helping their data governance manager interview senior stakeholders. And we met what I would consider a stereotypical investment banker who told me in no uncertain terms that their institution had been around for 250 years and had been extremely successful for 250 years, and they'd not yet had data governance, so he didn't see the need for it now. And that told me, put me in my place. But it was that kind of, that attitude is rife. Doesn't matter what sector you're in, what organization you're in. People go, but we've never had this thing before, so why do we need it now? Particularly if you're not doing it for a regulatory reason. And I think what you have to try and explain to people is the world in which we operate is changing. It's not the same. So yes, we've never had it before. And I know one of my colleagues that I've worked with a number of times over the years actually says to me, but your organization perhaps has been successful in spite of your data. I've never been brave enough to say that to a client, but it is something you think of.
And you think Lehman Brothers may have had that same approach, and where are they now?
Exactly.
So yeah, there's been
Absolutely.
and I think you're right. It's a different world now. And if you've spoken to those same companies, would you have a process and policy in place for you making a trade? You're doing it in a certain way. Of course they would. It's the same thing with now. You need some policies and processes to manage the data that's being used for that trade, which has become more abundant and more complicated. It is all about trying to understand what you do and simplify it, and having that metadata. I think I coined the term metadata, and I think it was trying to highlight the fact that we're collecting so much metadata now. We actually need to have the data about all that data. I think that's what helps us make better decisions. So before we go and answer more questions, I think we have the first bullet point that we have, which is how does data governance underpin business value? And Ian and quite a few of us are running a book now, because I say the word business value a lot. But I'm working with Matt Housley on a working title of book, High Performance Data Play. But one of the things we're trying to break down is what business value is. So how would you see, how do you see data governance? How can you actually link data governance and correlate it to business value, in your opinion?
That's a really hard question. I think it's an important one that we do. And I think, there's two ways of doing it. I'm not, I'm pretty good at data governance, even if I say so myself, but I'm not the most intelligent or mathematical person. So I always look for the anecdotal evidence. So just saying this is good for our business, it will deliver some value. That's a bit like the other thing I used to do when I was really naive, when I would say, so we're going to do data governance, I'm going to solve some problems, and I'm going to save you loads of money. But until I start doing data governance, I don't know what problems I'm going to solve, and therefore I don't know how much I'm going to save you or when. And you can understand, why would anybody sign that off, with the benefit of hindsight? But I was really keen and young and naive at the time. But I think what we've got to do is find some evidence internally of what I call data quality horror stories. What has gone wrong? Start to show these to people. People traditionally don't tell the bad news stories all the way up the line. So the senior stakeholders don't understand how much time is wasted or what goes wrong because of poor quality data, unless something absolutely disastrous happens. So I think, for me, I tend to go hunting for these data quality horror stories and start saying to them, well, if this is what I found in just a few hours, can you imagine what's happening across the whole organization? I mean, there are all sorts of very statistical techniques and clever things you can do as well with your data, particularly with the advent of machine learning. And I actually have he's a former client of mine who set up a whole company to do just that kind of thing. He's a very, very clever chap, and he can advise on doing all sorts of statistical techniques to determine data value. But I just think that probably most of the stakeholders you're talking to are not statisticians. So I like going with my data quality horror stories in the first instance.
I think it's a good approach, and you use another term I quite like is evidenceable, and I think a business case. So I've got an analogy we're playing with is you should treat your business case if it was a legal case, and you're taking it to a judge, and that judge, you're taking the evidence that will help you win that case. And I think what you referred to there is probably different sorts of evidence in the world. There's that smoking gun, the intangible, the DNA evidence. It's categorically, you've proved it. And then there is all that circumstantial evidence, or what if scenarios, or playing back to say, look, in these circumstances. And I think with anything you're doing, you need to pick whatever you have available to actually create that story. And I believe in the concept we're working on is that the more you can keep winning these business cases and build up trust within the judges and the jury system, your CEOs of the judge, and your C-suite of the jurors, if you keep winning them over individually, and then using that package approach, the how do you eat an elephant approach, of you're taking a bite size of each of your end data project or what you want to achieve, and each part of that includes a little bit of a little topping, a little side sauce of governance. And if you keep dishing that out, before you know it, you've actually educated each of the C-suite of the need for data governance. They'll be more supportive of it, and they probably would then have the evidence of the value that you provide. The only thing is you can't. And I've been there in a breach situation when it's like a cyber breach. Until it happens, you can't prove it is going to happen. So not having one is sometimes people don't see the benefit because you haven't had one. They definitely notice it after you've had one.
Yeah, I do think that's a really good point. I love the analogy with the with the legal case. I do like analogies. I find they really help people get their heads around concepts. But it is that the fact that we've got to be able to prove this. But it was something you were saying there made me think that some organizations, their culture is more risk adverse than others. So in some organizations, you could say, if we don't do this, then X is likely to happen. But in other organizations, they'll go, well, it's never happened before. Yeah. We're not interested. But if you've got the right culture, then the potential horror story can well work.
And I think that's the other one. You have a forensic data expert that comes in as a reference witness. You bring them in of someone that's had that. They've been on the side of a GDPR, someone from BA maybe when they had a large fight, or someone there that's experience on that side, and educating people that this is what happens if you don't do this. You can't keep ignoring it. And that risk, I think that risk style is something that when you're looking at your data governance maturity and where you level up in the different places, it will be based on your risk appetite as well as the size of the organization, the classification of your data. I think there's no one size fits all, and this is why having advice from someone like yourself or as an implementation, what we can help is we've been there, seen it, done that. I love the way you keep saying that, your naivety, the mistakes you made. And I think that's really good. I've made loads as well, and I've learned from all of them as well. And and being able to share them. Who was it? I went with the keen approach. It won't work in the long run, but maybe channel that effort in a different route. You'll probably succeed well. So I think before we go on the next one, I've got another question for you. We got not Ian, so it's okay. We go a non-Ian question. So that's I caught up with him at I think at the meetup as well as Big Data. So hi, Gus. How does data governance cross paths with data ethics and privacy by design? Will DG disappear for implementation as privacy engineering?
Ooh, so I think this is a good question. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well, Chris.
Yeah.
But I think obviously ethics and privacy are slightly different. I think it's really interesting that data ethics, I don't think has had the focus it really should have yet. But some organizations I've been working with, in the absence of any, nobody has a data ethics team, or very few people, perhaps. I don't know, perhaps the Daily Mail does, or something like that.
They need it though, don't they?
But, most people, it's not a common, we will have data security teams, but we don't always have data ethics. So I've seen with a few of my clients that somebody suddenly says, we ought to have a data ethics policy. And we go, oh, but we don't have a data ethics person or team. So who should we ask to do it? And it quite often falls upon the data governance. And I don't think that's because data governance people are particular experts in data ethics. I just think they are a very good, they're normally a person or team that has built up a really good network across the organization. They've built up allies in all the other data teams across the in the organization. So they're in a really good position to get the right feedback and input into such a data ethics policy. So I do think that if it isn't being written by the data governance team that's supported to, I think they should be an important stakeholder.
Yeah, definitely. I think data ethics it all links back to your company strategy of what is that? Well, what your board or CEO think, because Otherwise, you'll be in a situation where you've got this ethics role in organisation, but no one wants it, and you've got, you're trying to enforce something on people, and they're not going to, you're not going to get the buy-in from the higher up. So, yeah, I think first thing is it needs to be defined in your data strategy or the company's business strategy. You'll probably also get buy-in at what level of ethics, what level are you going to implement said policies. Which ones of them are legally required? So there's a lot of the anti-slavery ones and other ones that I know that you need to abide by. But there's I don't think they're ever. I think data governance will always be the custodians of that. They may go and get specialists into it. I think it's the place it probably sits. But my concern is when they started taking that from policy to reality, which is sometimes a very, very challenging journey.
I think the good thing with perhaps data governance being very closely aligned with data ethics is that if you've done data governance in, I can't say right because there's no one fixed right way of doing it, but if you've put a reasonable foundation in, you will have somewhere where your senior stakeholders meet. So call it a data governance committee or something similar. And I think that is where you would want perhaps data ethics decisions being made because they are the right senior stakeholders to make that. So I can see that they're good allies.
Yeah.
And need to be worked. So, and privacy is another thing that, again, totally different discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But my life was so much easier pre-GDPR. I used to stand up and do training courses and tell people what data governance wasn't. And I'd say, well, data protection has absolutely nothing to do with data governance because the Data Protection Act we had pre-GDPR, it didn't actually say your data could be rubbish, but it didn't really put any focus on it. But GDPR put in a number of requirements that really ask for data governance without asking for the words, because I am the sad person who searched to see whether the GDPR directive actually did have the words data governance in. But they want accountability and they want to understand what the data is, where it moves, what it's being used for. These are all things that data governance gives you. So GDPR has made it a lot easier in some firms and harder in others because there's a bit of tension about who does what. But in the companies where it goes well, I think the privacy team understand that the data governance are meeting a lot of their requirements in a sustainable way. And it's really good. Everybody accepts that you have to do, your privacy by design. People will have to fill in questionnaires. So it's really easy to slip a couple of data governance ones in there because I think people have had the culture change and accepted that they have to do GDPR. So I think that can be very helpful for us. I don't think that data governance will disappear because data governance scope is far wider than that of data privacy. Whilst we help data privacy, we do a lot more than that. So I always think we're going to be really good allies and hopefully work together well.
I think it leads on to the next topic, which is that centralized, so decentralized. I think that privacy engineering, that's the decentralized part that we've provided them the guardrails of how to work with that. But they're still working in that overall data governance department capability, which I think, as you said, with the ethics part, is getting wider, and I think it will get wider as well, with other regulatory things that will come in, especially with AI. GDPR also started touching on that explainable of decisions as well. So if you had algorithms out there and you need to maybe be able to evidence why you made that decision. I think that's going to become even more with generative AI and other rules and decisions, because they have control over our lives. So whether we get accepted for something or not, and unless you're able to evidence when challenged, the rationale for the decision that was made, you're going to be, you may have some problems again, or it's going to be cost you some legal fees at least anyway. I suppose let's go straight on to that next topic, and we'll come back to some more questions in a bit because there's some great questions coming in. Should data governance be centralized or decentralized? I might have alluded to the answer a little bit there, but what's your view, Nicola?
So, it should always be decentralized, but it will need support from a central team, which is what gets people confused. So data governance, in my view, has to be done by the business users. And this is where perhaps data governance is very different from some of the other data management disciplines. So you have a data security team and they worry about the encryption. They might ask for input from the business, but they do the data security for you. They do the access management. Whereas data governance team is more about helping the business to decide the rules and implement them for them. So the data governance team doesn't sit and do everything, but they are important to support and make sure it happens. But we need senior stakeholders being data owners. We need them to nominate one or more data stewards who are the subject matter experts in the data. But more than that, we need a data culture across the whole of our organization, so that even if you're the most junior person inputting data, you know that it has to be done in a certain way. And if you can't, or there's a problem, you know to notify somebody. You don't just think, what's the quickest way I can enter this data and move on to the next form?
Yeah, totally. So I think it's a growing. I like the art of possible as a explain, showing the business what can be done. And I think that's that role of the data governance team to start with. And data governance has sometimes been a swear word, or like it's. And I think Sana was put something on here as well. Actually, it's always an afterthought. Put that up, and it's always left to the end. We'll come back to that one further. But I think that's quite a key thing, is that it's not thought right at the beginning. And I think if we did have that mindset and show, it's not that difficult, it's not that hard. If you work in this way, these are benefits from it. A certain level of autonomy it should be given to them. Okay, implementation, fine details, I don't mind how you do it, but this is the sort of information we need collected back to help with the business making better decisions, or for a regulatory requirement, or to understand security exposure, or for PCI compliance. Whatever the benefit that we're going to get out of it, you need to have something that, and they don't need to know that you're having to satisfy all these things. You need to know, look, these are the bare minimum metrics I need from this, or a process needed for this. I think that will start to embed that as a way of thinking. I think, with I was working in this industry for many years. A lot of it, it's second nature to us, because we've been there, seen the battle scars. The more we can do with that storytelling and helping create decentralized capabilities that work in a consistent manner, we've solved that scaling problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we have some of the perhaps more exciting, going back to Sunil's point, exciting data things are adding mud to this one as well. Because, I think data mesh has the potential to be really exciting. I helped my first client do data governance for data mesh last year. But I find that a lot of people are saying, wow, data governance means we have to move from centralized data governance to federated. And we're going, you should never have done centralized in the first place. It would never work. So I think in some ways, their argument is perpetuating the people who have got one team who are supposed to know and understand every single piece of data. They're perpetuating that's okay for the data that's not in the data mesh, and it's not.
Yeah. And I suppose, I've just put this question up here as well, because and I think we've probably just we've given our view of what that looks like. It is a mindset that sits within the individual engineering teams. But I think what this question highlights is that we've got so many technologies, so many tools out there. And we're not going to start picking what vendor to go with and that, but that's a whole different show on its own. But when looking to go and get a tooling or get something in to help you, what approach would you look to take on that challenge?
What? So to help you with data governance,
Yeah.
because I'm not an expert on other tech. So I would say I very much focus on the people side of data governance. I decided, well, in the early days there weren't tools. Then there were like 2 or 3, and I kind of got to know them and everything. But now I would say there are so many different data governance tools, but they all have slightly different capabilities, and you've got everything from basically an Excel spreadsheet on steroids, all the way through to something all singing or dancing can now start doing data quality and other things for you as well. So my best advice for anybody is be very clear on what you want the tool to do before you start talking to the vendors. But more importantly than that, and I should have said it first, but it's at the end of the day, my brain's getting tired, is make sure you're doing data governance first. And even the vendors that I, do events with and things say, don't get upset when I say this. When we ordinarily we come up with a tool, and it's either to do something new and exciting, or it's to make something we currently do easier. If we suddenly say, well, we're doing data governance, here's a tool to do it, everybody's going, well, we're not entirely sure we want to do data governance. And now you're making us get your head around a tool. So I always find it's better to make sure you're doing data governance first, because data governance a tool doesn't do it for you. It enables it, they facilitate, they really do help. I'm not against them in any stretch of the imagination, but make sure you're doing data governance first, have very clear requirements that what it is that you're doing with data governance at your organization and what needs you need met. And then I think you'll be in a much better position to select the right tool for you.
Great
and
advice.
If you're still struggling, contact me and I can introduce you to my friend who really does make it his mission to understand the different tools. I always refer to him.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think what has happened, and I've seen this in many places, is the tool is imposed on the business to say you need to work like this, rather than the business looking at this tool, looking to help the business and what they do, and that they're always failures. They're always failures.
Absolutely.
So we're coming in thick and fast. We are Ian back again. Where does data governance fit alongside data modeling and data engineering teams?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if anybody on the call, are you all aware of Dharma, the Data Management Association? And many people have heard of the Dharma wheel, or its proper name is the Dharma DMBot wheel. So Dharma has a data management body of knowledge, and it has a chapter on every single data management discipline. And when they first launched the DMBot many moons ago now, they created this lovely wheel diagram to show all the different disciplines. And even in version 2, data engineering is not there as a discipline, because this is an interesting thing. Preparing for a training course that I'm running in a few weeks' time, somebody asked me, they wanted me to look at roles, and actually a data engineering team were roles that existed, but it's almost like an amalgamation of the data management disciplines together. So, but I love the Dharma wheel because it has data management disciplines all around in segments, and you got data governance slap bang in the middle. It does cause some pain, because some people take that to mean that data governance is everything on that wheel, which it clearly isn't. But they put data governance in there because it supports everything. And I think that what the key message to come out of that is that, data governance doesn't stand on its own, nor do data modeling, nor do data engineering. I mean, even because I was preparing for this course, I can tell you some data engineer definitions will tell you that they do data modeling. So I don't know where that leaves your data modelers. So I think what's really important is that you have to work with these teams and agree who does what. So if you've got data modelers who are happy to do conceptual data models, which I think are a key tool to use early in a data governance initiative. Well, you don't need to do them if you've got a data modeling team that you're working well with and are happy to do them. But I've equally worked with data modelers who go, I'm not playing around with those faffy, silly conceptual data models. I want proper logical ones, in which case they're perhaps not your main helpers. But they might, they should have already been capturing data definitions. They're going to be a really good source of information and people to work with. And again, with data engineering is a little bit perhaps trickier, because I think data engineers traditionally see data governance as the people that are blocking them and stopping them getting on and doing their work.
Yeah.
So it comes back to what we were saying, the same as you do with the senior stakeholders. We need to explain to them how we're going to help them. We're going to help them find the right data quicker, actually deliver the right thing on time, perhaps speed up UAT. The users won't be going, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So and that reminds me of well, I don't know whether it was a funny anecdote from Big Data London. I was queuing to go and see Scott Taylor, and the queue for our theatre went past the data engineering theatre, where I heard somebody saying in a very loud voice, I bet they don't have this problem in the data governance theatre. I bet they're not queuing because it'll be empty because nobody cares about data governance. At which point I stared at him but decided to behave myself and bite my tongue. But actually, we should all be best friends, and we should all be working together and working out, sometimes, different clients I've helped, the roles or responsibilities are shifted between the teams, and it's just what's right for your organization. But we need to have those conversations to decide who is best placed to do each of those, so we don't have any gaps, we don't duplicate any effort.
Yeah, and I think on that one, I did a joke, a tongue-in-cheek post, I think, as I do sometimes, about data governance need a bit of a rebranding to make it cool again, and I think calling it, data lawyers or data doctors. If you got some policy, you data lawyer, you need them, and you need a doctor when you need one of them. So governance doesn't have that. I don't think it really encapsulates the true value that it provides to an organization.
No.
Which
we suffer from a branding problem, really.
I don't know how we make data governance sexy. I don't know. I'm not too sure how we do that, but the data science has got all the fun on that one.
They have. Yeah. I did have one client who started up a big data science but data analytics program a few years back, and realized quite quickly they weren't going to deliver what they were supposed to because of the poor data or lack of data. And they quickly stood up a data governance team, and I went in to help train up the whole program team and everything. And the data governance team decided by the end of the training day that they needed to have a tagline, and their tagline was "helps you do the cool stuff."
Yeah.
Because nobody was volunteering to help them. Everybody was volunteering to be part of the data science program.
Yeah. Let us make your project a success. Not all like the ones that didn't involve us.
Exactly. Yeah. I like it. That's another good tagline. Perhaps we should have a competition. What's the best tagline for data governance?
Yeah. I think that's a good approach. I have to give a shout out to Danny Warham today. Danny Warham, I haven't read a long one, so let's hope it's not controversial, but straight up. There's a big bubble there. But Danny, great to tune in. We worked together a couple of places over the years. So all the challenges of 5 minutes to my current employer, and it's an uphill battle. The G word. Yeah. I think he's just agreeing. I think there's a.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's really funny you saying that. Actually, one of my clients did change their team name to Data Enablement, and that they felt was better received. I've also when in the days when I was still acting as like an interim data governance lead, being called, the team's been called data quality, because the data governance team often ends up doing the data quality activities as well, and people want data quality. They're just not entirely sure they want data governance.
Yeah. I've got, and I'm not. I think this is from Adam. It doesn't say because it blocks the use sometimes. This is Adam Stancliffe, but I the CDO role. I did the panel, and I had Katie Ward from Sage was on there, and again the research for the book. We've been looking at the different roles, and I think what we said was that CDOs are set up to fail because they're not empowered to actually deliver what they're there for. And I think, and Katie's view is, and I think I share the same, is that the CDOs we probably hired have been technical CDOs, and they're frustrated because they want to implement something that they're not able to because the CTO has it or the CIO has it. And you look at the amount of time that a CDO stays in a job compared to a CEO, it's about 18 months is the average, and then it's 6 years is one for a CEO. So it just shows that there's a high turnover. I think it is because it's the wrong role. I'm sorry, the wrong sort of people, or the more technical. And I think what the data department needs is a sales and marketing capability that understands the business, and it's that selling the art of the possible to all the departments, and then having a great technical team that can go and deliver it once you sold it. Because if you can't sell it, there's no point to deliver anything.
No, I think that's great idea.
So yeah, I definitely think that at CDO should be. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I don't know whether that means maybe adding a C into it as well. Yeah, the CDO's got a commercial aspect to it as well.
Yeah. Or I wonder whether the COO and CDO role will merge in the future.
Yeah.
It was as I was reading this, I was thinking last week I had a call with a prospective customer, and unbeknownst to me, they don't have a CDO, but she invited the COO. And he accepted, which was, I wish I'd had some warning. But he was really positive and supportive about data and the importance of data. And to be fair, I've spoken to a number of COOs at my clients over the years who are, once they get it and they understand its impact on operations, they are. So I don't know. This is really kind of, I haven't got my crystal ball with me today. But yeah,
right.
I do wonder whether perhaps that's where the COO role, the CDO role will disappear to.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we got these are merging, but I think the other problem is we've only given 3 letters to describe what these people do, and everyone would give jumped on their own conclusion of just from the one word data of what their role is in organisation. So I don't think the proliferation of all these different C roles hasn't helped. I think there's probably a step back and work out for your company to be a success. What C-suite you need, but again, it'll be a different approach to the size organisation. There's no one size fits all. That's why we're all consultants. We got, I think, the next one. We're doing all right. We've got 2 more bullet points here, but we get enough questions anyway to chat about. What are the different pillars that form a data governance function? And we talked about ethics recently, compliance. We talked about CISO, the security. So what do you think of the pillars, and how many of them are that fall under that data governance umbrella now?
So yeah, I've not thought about it in terms of pillars for many years, since the first consultancy I worked for used to have a diagram that had pillars, but I can't remember what they were. But for me, I would say the first one's got to be understanding your data. So this is your data glossary or your data catalog, understanding what our data is, agreeing what we mean by customer. Do we all mean the same thing? Chances are probably not until we start having those conversations. And then I think there is this an understanding of the data. Would also include perhaps data lineage, how it flows through the organization, your conceptual data models and things like that. And then I think the other part is the data quality side of things. So solving issues that we're aware of on our data, but then also proactively coming up with data quality rules and monitoring the data that's really, really key and critical. I think they're the main 2. A bit like we were saying with data ethics, I've seen data governance teams acquire all sorts of other extras because in doubt of we don't know who else to give it to, let's give it to the data governance guys. I've seen them have that end user computing, because these spreadsheets and access databases that the users are running. The end user computing approach tends to be a mixture of data quality, data governance, business continuity, backup, those kind of things. So it doesn't fit nicely into anybody's ball. So that goes there. And I quite often see some responsibility, or at least coordination responsibility, around data retention as a not pure data governance, but we don't know who else to give it to. And then the data governance team can use their network of data owners to get at least some input from them on, from a business point of view, how long do they want to hold their data before deleting it?
Or how long they're allowed to hold that data as well.
Well, that's when I toss it over the fence to legal.
Yeah, I suppose it gets quite complex there. I've got I've got Chris here as well. Another one as well. Do you think the data governance is similar to a bridge between the technical teams and the business, and how it helps the consistency deliver? Yeah, I think we both agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the early days of doing data governance, I used to call myself a translator. So I worked for a very large bank initially, and it was a very typical IT and business them and us, and we don't talk to each other and blame everybody, the other one, for all the problems. And I think I was suddenly the person that was saying, "Oh, I understand why you need the business to do this," and then because I was helping IT, then they would then listen to me when I said, well, the business need this kind of thing. They're just not very good at articulating their data requirements because nobody's asked them to or told them to how to do that in the past.
Yeah, and I think going back to that CDO sort of role there, I think it's head of data governance, or the person there should be your technical expert, or your expert witness that you wheel in at the right time, and to help with that after possible, and explaining why it's needed, to help the business understand the associated risk of not doing it, or the associated value.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen Daniel's latest comment? I love that.
Let's go.
And I think that fits in perfectly. It is all to do with, it is this messaging. So having somebody that actually has the comm skills and the DG understanding, perfect. Can it get the right message in the right format for the right audience?
Yeah, it's all down to narrative, isn't it? And then we had Scott Taylor on here a few weeks back, and
He's great.
He's brilliant. But he can sell anything. But it's creating that FOMO of if you don't go, if you don't want to, why wouldn't you want to work with us? Because all the other projects I have made a success. Has some stats to say, when data governance wasn't involved, internal projects were 3 times likely to fail. You get that message that's being backed up and evidenced. Who's not going to go for it? It becomes a slam dunk.
Yeah, so, and I think it's I've only worked with, I think, about 2 clients over all these years that have had that luxury of having their own comms person, but I've always gone to find the internal comms team or manager to get their support and advice, and I end up telling the people I'm coaching over the years that they have to become their own comms expert, because exactly what you're just saying, Chris, we've got to create FOMO. So what you want is, to be shouting about the fact you've saved the finance team £50,000 or something, so that the ops come up to you and go, well, why have you saved finance 50,000 and not saved us? Exactly. And at which point you have to be the bigger person and not say, because you refuse to talk to us about data governance, and just say, oh, that's great. Well, shall I come and talk to you next week or next month or something?
The best salespeople you can get are your customers or someone you've done something for, because their story is going to be worth 10 times. Well, I'm not going to say that's factually 10 times, but worth a lot more than your own story, because people listen to it more. It's got that credibility. So I think that's that whole data department and governance being a part of that as well. We need to create that FOMO of why you want to work with us, and that ambassador to the business to go and like a sales tour internally, like letting people know, go to their meetups, and like talk governance until it becomes cool to drink and talk about it as well. Yeah, we nearly done that at the meetup the other day, so we're making governance cool.
We did.
So I think I got a couple of spare ones as well, but I think one that I had on the original show, or the overview, was how to take policy to reality in a fast-paced environment. And I've got some views on this as well, but I love your take on this, Nicola.
So I think this is where perhaps it's difficult with data governance, because in a fast-paced environment, data governance is seen as like a blocker or an obstacle. So I think when you asked me that question, you were making me think of the number of times somebody said to me, how do you do data governance in an agile manner or in an agile environment? And I used to be a project manager, but it was so long ago, waterfall method was the only option. But the beginning part of data governance, when you put the foundations in place, it really suits a waterfall approach and not so much the agile. And I had somebody on one of my courses where they asked this question a few years ago, and I said, well, this is my dilemma. I think you can do little chunks and sprints of data governance really well, and that will suit a fast-paced environment once you got the foundations. But if you haven't got the foundations in place, these little sprints, these little chunks will not work. They will fail. You've got to get this base layer first. And he told me about something which I hadn't heard of, which is called agile fall, which is almost like using a combination of waterfall and agile. And
I
so
call
it
it
was almost
agile.
like we'd use agile fall for data governance. So we'd just do the first bit in the waterfall, just get some base in so that we're all doing the same thing consistently. And then you can go off onto your little chunks and be able to perhaps respond much quicker.
Yeah, I think as anything, you need to lay some foundations you can go and build on it. And I think you can't do all that stuff agile. You can work agile in some context. Yeah, I think it's wagile, waterfall agile. We've referred to it as in the past as well. Yeah, and it's what works for your organization. I think what I have seen, and this is where some advice out get out there or give out there, is that it's how these policies are written. Sometimes it's all down to how you think they need to be implemented, or you take that wording to a technical implementation. And I think some things that get overlooked is there's sometimes a bit more of a purist approach to how a policy is stated, to how it's implemented. And I think the view I have is that if that policy makes it impossible to satisfy the requirements that your users have given for that data, then there needs to be a question. Okay, are the controls too much? Have we gone too far? Have we gone too far on the risk one, where we're actually preventing there being any value in that data whatsoever? And I can give an example of where I've seen this, and it was column level encryption taken to an extreme, where it was every single part of the address, every single to column level encryption. So you couldn't do any searches on it. You'd have to decrypt it. You couldn't do any profiling, because you have to go and decrypt the profiling. So yeah, I think there's a balance sometimes when a policy is written, to sit down with the business as well, because just defining that policy and saying you have to do it this way without understanding the full ramifications or impact to that, it may let you rethink it, and also there's many controls and things you can put from a technology which may mitigate it. And I think it goes back to that working closely to the business and the tech, working closely to the business and data governance and the technical team to work as a team, and define the solution that solves the end game, which is making your company money, so you get your bonus, you have your salary.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for being pragmatic and practical and not doing everything because we can. As you say, yes, we can encrypt everything, but it makes it an absolute nightmare to try and use the data.
Yeah, exactly. I think appropriate and pragmatic approach is what should we take. But I think the key is that make sure you understand, whenever the policy there, understand how that's going to affect the business world, and then I think everyone will get on much better as well, and there won't be as much wasted money in discussions and meetings around it.
This is true.
I suppose we can't. I've got two more. I'm gonna go save my favorite one till last, actually. But if we can't have a podcast out talk about generative AI nowadays, because it's the standard thing everyone's talking about. So, and do you think the increased focus on generative AI is making us refocus on data governance?
Oh, definitely. Because, AI will not work correctly if we give it the wrong data or rubbish data. So if anything, I think it's increasing the need for data governance, and that might help the sales pitch internally, because so many organizations want to jump on the Gen AI bandwagon. And if they haven't already got good data governance in place, how do you know you're going to feed the right data? So you could be wasting a significant amount of money very quickly if you do AI without data governance.
And I think that's a really good way of showing. I think it's increased the speed to highlighting poor quality data, because you can quite easily, connect up some Gen AI capabilities to a number of different data stores, run it on there, run up a big bill with some GPUs, and give someone access to it. And if that's a business user and it's their data, they're going to quickly see the impact of the poor poor quality data that's in there, or the hallucinations that may happen or that will come from it. Well, that's probably not the poor, that's the missing data. Yeah, so I'm really pleased. I think it's the first time I've seen a hype cycle that's actually made us focus on the right things. And I'm not saying we're in smug mode or anything like that now, but we told you so, everybody. You should have been doing this a while ago. But now I think there is an understanding that you can't get to where the end game unless you start addressing this. So I'm really, really pleased that it is creating the right conversations now. I'll come back to Danny's because one of it, but I think this is one of, again, it's connected to my research for the book, and I was talking about a competitive advantage. So, what is the value of having competitive advantage? And if you look at the companies that are now the top performing, or the top of the FTSE, or the whichever share NASDAQ or whatever, they change it, and it's normally because they're agile, they can quickly, they can move, and it's their competitive advantage of the ability for them to adapt to the environment changes. So do you think data governance, a loaded question, do you think data governance can actually help with competitive advantage?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Even so the first client that my first consultancy put me in had exactly that. Some things were happening in the market that I suddenly thought, oh, there's a real opportunity for us here. The marketing team came up with a really good idea, but they had to move quickly. But the data that they wanted wasn't available easily. It was in multiple spreadsheets across the organization. It took them 2 weeks to get the data together. And in the meantime, one of their main competitors had beaten them to it. So yeah, I think, and I've seen other examples, but that was 18, 17 years ago, something like that. And even then, they suddenly realized that we didn't know what data we had, we didn't know where it wasn't all on the same basis. So when we found it, we couldn't combine it easily. And I think there is this. It allows you to pivot and be innovative.
Mm-hmm.
If you see an opportunity, you can be innovative safely.
Yep. And I mean, the thought of having on this is for you to be able to release a new feature, to get a new capability out to beat the competition. It's all back to your processes, and if those processes, where that data is, you know the quality of that data, the ownership of that data. I think it's two things. It's one, it will help you deliver features which will give you that competitive advantage, but also an evaluation of that company, anyone coming in from an M&A perspective, that'll be a tick. They have this capability. It is mature, and I think that will add to. There's a, I can't remember what in the UK but there is a reference to goodwill and how you calculate it.
Yeah.
I think the more you can provide that evidence, and that data governance is part of that overall evidence, I think you can have multipliers on the value of your company. So there you go. There's another reason to do data governance.
Excellent. We'll come up with loads of them this evening.
Exactly. So we're coming to that. I've got. I think no, we got Danny's. Let's just see. I'll put Danny's on up here as I'm wrapping. What's this? Yes. Yeah. He's talking my language. Principles, guidelines, no friction gates. It's that perfect world, Danny. That's that perfect world.
Yeah. I think this would be wonderful to do, and it is achievable. And it's quite a few years ago, I helped an organization set up exactly this. They were setting up their data lake for the first time, and they didn't want it to become a data swamp. So they wanted to come up with some clear principles, or as you say, as guide rails, so that they couldn't have the organization quickly finding data and putting it on there, and them going, well, hang on a minute, I need you to stop and do loads of data governance and come back in a few months' time. Wasn't going to land. So we created a whole guidebook that kind of said, and these are the checkpoints that you have to do. It worked really, really well. We did some minimal training for product managers, and then actually the data governance team weren't doing an awful lot. And it was down to, they were like just the final approval before data could be ingested into the data lake, and it went far better than I've seen it at loads of other organizations.
That's really good. That's really good. So I think we're approaching to the hour. I suppose if anyone wants to find out more about you, Nicola, what you're up to, do you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. I'm always happy to talk data governance, as you've probably just noticed. And my website is just nicolaaskham.com. I have loads of things on there, including like the next dates for my training courses and things like that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, it's been great to meet you personally, actually, last week, but great for you to be on the show. And I hope, well, I know I've learned some stuff from today, so I hope everyone else have got some insights. Next week, there's a slight change to the timing because logistics. I'm actually flying at the time, so it's going to be Tuesday next week where we got John Cook. We're going to be talking about the value of data product management. So yeah, thank you for everyone tuning in next Tuesday. Yeah, and thanks for all the questions. All right, that's a wrap.
You.
Thanks,
Bye.
Nicola.